Good morning, everyone. Museum, kind of windy, and when I flip the camera around here, show you a couple buildings, I'll hold the camera up a little bit closer to my face. So hopefully, on this. But it's Palm Sunday. It's a day where I know a lot of people would normally be going out to churches, and unfortunately, that's just not the case today. So I thought I'd make a quick stop out at a couple of churches right in my own backyard. Are probably some that we're all familiar with. It's pretty chilly out today, so I don't think my fingers tweed jacket warm. But the first church we are at Church of Christ. Now we are at 7th and Pine, to give you an idea of where we are. So, little building back over there. Towers. But this is having a couple technical difficulties. Wind was blowing my signal. Is one of the old here in town. Dates all the way. I'm having such a wireless signal here today. So again, sorry for any technical difficulties. I'm not sure why I'm having a hard time with my... So St. John's is a really windy day. Let me know. German church later, although it has the original steeple from the earlier church better service. The parsonage here. All right, so we've got nice kind of, and again to give you, because on my end it's really kind of going kind of, all right. First Congregational. And turning down Court Street, which definitely has kind of the nicest collection of historic homes in the city. That's going to probably get its own whole video at some point. All right, maybe we're staying a little more stable now. So I'm sorry about that earlier. There was a lot of cutting in and out. I think there's like a bad spot for cell reception or something down the street by St. John's. We'll have to try that again sometime. So we're walking by, this is the Ballentine House. So Ballentine owned what was called the Ballentine Block downtown. The house dates to about 1850. So it is one of the older homes in the area. And it's kind of a French Gothic revival with a nice arched roof there. A nice kind of polychromatic paint scheme, which is real neat. It's next to, there's this nice kind of Italianate cube. You know, we talked, one of the last walks, we talked about the Corn Belt cube. This one's a little different, the Italianate cube. One of the biggest, easiest ways you can tell is if you look right up underneath where my finger is. I'll let that get less blurry. Above the windows, there are those sets of two, they're called brackets, that are holding up the little cornice around the roof there. Sometimes you see even like a little thing in the top, a little room. But this one's a little bit of a simpler version of that. Some more historic homes. We're actually probably going to go across the street. There's another kind of Italianate cube there in olive with those cool brackets that are kind of really a defining characteristic. Like I said, we're going to walk across the street. We can see those brackets really well. Now, this is a well-built brick building. But what I wanted to talk about was the First Congregational Church here. So this is a great example. The First Congregational Church is one of the oldest congregations in the city of Port Huron, dating all the way back to like the 1840s. Obviously, this church isn't from the 1840s. The church right here dates to 1968, and it's a great example of kind of a modernist approach to churches. Churches have their own whole architectural vocabulary. They've got all of their own sets of style that you see in church buildings. This one you can see is very modernist, but it retains some things like kind of the stained glass there. We think of stained glass going all the way back to like medieval times and before. I've got a couple of my aunts watching. Good morning, Aunt Michelle. Good morning, Aunt Debbie. I'm glad to see they're here. There's another great church there on the corner. Like, one of the things that is part of that vocabulary I mentioned in church architecture is like there's a steeple. Now this one doesn't really have a steeple. St. John's did earlier. We can see there's the steeple there for, I think that's the Episcopal Church, and might be hard to see on camera, but if I move this way a little bit further, if we look down the street, yeah, right there, right about the center of the camera right now, there's the First Methodist, and that's kind of a modern steeple, modern take on one. So kind of, again, one of those elements you see different versions of and different styles of. But I really like this kind of modern approach with the First Congregational. Now, I want to walk one more block, and there's one other religious building I want to talk a little bit about. There's another great Queen Anne house right down there with kind of a blue-green top, white on bottom. It's kind of a non-traditional paint scheme, but not completely unknown around here. We've got some more gorgeous historic homes on this block as well. There's another beautiful Queen Anne here that's got kind of a tower in the back. One of the things I really like about this house, there's a couple of things I can point out. So here's another just architectural term to throw in the back of your head or something up there. Right up there we've got, that's kind of called a Palladian plan window, where you've got kind of three parts to it. The middle part's a little bit higher and got that arch. So that's kind of, you usually see those a lot on Italianates, but occasionally you do see them on Queen Anne's, just like this one. I also really like the use of the shingles up there to make kind of a different color pattern, just a way to make your roof even pop out. There's some really cool, like, kind of barrage boards up there, and another Palladian plan window on the front. It's a nice thematic tie together right there. So a gorgeous house right here, again on Court Street, where you see all of these kind of architectural pieces that really make these houses unique, really stand out. There's another one. This one's a full 3 stories of house. There's a whole lot of house. As somebody who lives, it's probably no surprise to people, but I have a historic home that I live in, and it's really big. I've got more space than I know what to do with, which can sometimes actually be a bit of a challenge. There's another neat piece here. Take a look at the barrage boards on this piece. Again, sometimes these are called like gingerbread because it makes people think of gingerbread houses. It's a nice little touch there. There's another historic home that dates back to the 1880s. This one's kind of an Italianate in its form, with that tower and kind of L shape around the tower, which is pretty neat. And this one is 1884. You can see it's got that nice Old Town Historic District sign on it. Now we are also at the other religious building I wanted to talk about. This is the originally built as the Mount Sinai Synagogue. So a lot of people might not realize that Port Huron did have a large enough Jewish population to support a synagogue. Now, obviously today it's the New Covenant Church of God. It's been converted to a Christian church, but there have been some of these houses of worship for some other faiths. This one dates back to 1925 is when the building itself was built. And you can see, obviously today there's a cross up on that pediment. It used to be a Star of David, and it's kind of neat to see again a synagogue like this. Sounds like they're maybe doing a live stream of a service. I can hear them, maybe you guys can too, singing some hymns from inside. But it's got some of those same pieces of kind of Western religious significance, like again kind of a stained glass effect there, although it's pretty small. As you can see, this is not a huge church. In fact, it's my understanding for most of Jewish services you need at least 10 adult males who have been through a bar mitzvah. And in fact, in the 1990s, they just didn't have enough people to do this anymore. So that's eventually why the synagogue was sold, converted to a church. There's another synagogue over in Sarnia. So those are just three of those places of worship that we have taken a look at here in kind of the old town district. Obviously, Port Huron has a lot of churches in it, and I think there are some really gorgeous ones. I talked about Grace Episcopal is another one that we were right over kind of nearby that we've looked at in the past. That one I think has a beautiful sanctuary. I haven't actually gotten to go in all of these churches. There are, like I said, some beautiful buildings, and the ones that I have seen. Take a look at this. That's pretty cool. I like the little, almost like a bay window, but for a porch that's sticking off the front of this house. That's pretty neat. I haven't seen something quite like that before. And maybe we'll come back this way. I'm heading back to where I started, a nice little closed loop. Hopefully we won't have any more technical difficulties, but we can look at we got one more church up this way. If you know of another beautiful church in the area, something you want to know a little bit more about, there was a great book that was published in 2007 for the sesquicentennial of the city, so our 150th birthday, and there was a great section that had kind of a history of almost all the major churches here in town, a history of the congregation, a little bit of a history of the buildings. So that is a great resource if you want to know a little bit about the history. I'll tell you, like I said, one of those things about churches is they have an architectural vocabulary all their own. I think this one dates to the 1890s. If I remember that little booklet well from reading it. There are some neat things here. There are these rosettes, which are these great big, sometimes they're stained glass. Yeah, those look like they are stained glass as well, so they can create some beautiful effects. I gotta say, I think one of the other most beautiful interiors to a church anywhere in St. Clair County is actually there's an antique store. It used to be a church of the Mariner in Marine City. It was all maritime themed, which is not really a huge surprise with Marine City, but it's now an antique store. If you get the chance to go down there when everything opens up again, that is a gorgeous interior. Go about 11 o'clock, the sun will shine in through all of that stained glass, and it is absolutely beautiful. So again, we've got a steeple, another rosette here on this side of the First Presbyterian. Yeah, 1895, right there on that handy dandy plaque. So, I'm always kind of amazed when walking around to see some of these buildings. It's a great opportunity to walk up close and take a look at something that you might just pass by ordinarily. So that's a good question. Bridget asks if the denominations of churches share a specific architectural style, or is it specific? They can vary pretty wildly. So one of the things you will see when it comes to style is Catholic churches in particular, and we'll look at maybe some of those sometime in the near future. A lot of them share a very similar plan, and you'll see maybe a slightly different... We'll walk down the street here because I got to walk back home anyway. A lot of times Catholic churches will have kind of a unique plan or setup. A lot of them are cruciform in shape, so they look like a big cross. If you've been inside, there's the altar at the front, and then sometimes like a baptismal fount on the right, or maybe like a pulpit on the left, and it looks like a cross if you were to look at it from the top down. Sometimes with a lot of those, you will also see some different styles. You'll typically see a lot more like Byzantine in form. So there's like the one here looks Romanesque, which is pretty cool. There are some other denominations that I don't think there are any in St. Clair County. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are things like Greek Orthodox or Byzantine Orthodox. I used to live down in Dearborn, and the Byzantine Orthodox church that was nearby had big onion domes. It was a very specific type of style. Now, I wanted to walk across the street because here's something I mentioned in a video the other day. We'll do like a whole video on these. But remember I was talking about upright and wing as being kind of a unique Michigan style? This is kind of like a version of that. So you can see there's an upright, right? And there's a wing. This wing has a second story to it. But if you looked at this from the top down, it looked like an L. So there's a really great example of kind of a regional Michigan style of house. Next to another cool kind of Greek revival home. You can tell one of the things I like about this Greek home, it's got these are called cornice returns. Sometimes you see the pediment is all the way in. These just have little returns that kind of hint at it. These two little pieces that turn in makes it look like a Greek temple. So anyway, I mentioned so some denominations have those very architectural styles. Protestant churches can vary. Sometimes they are very plain Jane Protestant churches. Other times you'll see that the Protestant churches have an incredibly elaborate outside to the building, and then a very, very stark and plain interior. And some of that is result. I mean, you could have a whole. I think it'd be neat to do a whole study of kind of theology and architecture and how they intersect. But you see it as kind of a reaction to Catholicism, where some of the Protestant denominations said, no, we really don't want as much pomp and ceremony and pageantry, and it's going to be very simple inside. And you think about those with like the simple churches you see in New England, whereas Catholic churches, they're highly decorated, lots of stained glass, lots of, the station's the cross on the inside. Those are another option. All right, we've got one last church here in the neighborhood, and I think we'll end up here. This one's pretty neat because, again, it looks this is kind of I'd say Gothic revival, medieval revival. Looks like a little castle, like a little abbey, something you'd see out of medieval Europe. So here's, I'll tell you this little anecdote here as we walk around the front. So again, we are right next to the museum. Whenever the museum has an event where we are serving alcohol, we need to get like a liquor license for a fundraiser. One of the requirements, as per state law, is we have to get a sign-off. We have to get permission from every church within 500 feet, which for us is probably more than anywhere else in the city, because we've got First Congregational back there, Grace Episcopal over there, and Our Savior Lutheran right here. If there were a church on this corner or in this block, we would be completely surrounded at the museum. So whenever we have one of those, I get to make a visit to all of these churches just to get some signatures. There's never been a problem or anything like that, but I think of that every time. There's a lot of churches all within just a couple of blocks. There's like 5 within about 2 blocks of here. So again, you can kind of see that medieval style on this church as well. Alright, so we've looked at a number of different churches. Again, hopefully it's not too disorienting with the disruptions we had at the very beginning of the video. I'll have to go back and look and see if it actually came through. I just got a lot of disruptions on my end where it said, oh, your wireless signal isn't good, and it was cutting out. So we started at St. John's, we looked at the Congregational Church, Presbyterian Church, the Lutheran Church, we went down, we even saw Synagogue. So those are just some of the churches in the area. There's obviously a lot more. I'd love to look at some more if anybody's got any suggestions. It just seemed kind of appropriate today on this Sunday. It's pretty cool out, so if you go on a walk today, definitely bring a jacket, something warm to keep yourself warm. And like I said, a great place to read about that is that 150th book. Ask around. If you don't have it, probably one of your friends might. I know there's a couple copies at the library. It's a great resource for some of that local history. So again, you'll find that history is right here in your own backyard. So this is Andrew Kircher from Port Huron Museums, thanking you for coming along on this walk with me. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something. Hopefully you're able to hear it all. The wind really died down. But thanks for coming along, and until next time, we'll see you. If you like what you see, like this, share it with your friends, and we'll keep doing these as long as we can. All right, until next time, take care.